The ability to have VLO stealth comes from decisions that were made at the very beginning of the program. You really need to design VLO stealth in from the outset, because you need things like large capacity internal tanks. You need to be able to carry weapons internally. The ability to align the edges, the leading edges, and the horizontal tails, the way the aircraft shape, the ability to hide the front frame of the engine and have a curved inlet, even interoperability, RAM material, all those, the sensors, the fact that we embed all of the apertures and antennas into the leading edges, all of those are decisions that, when they're combined all together, give you that all aspect of VLO stealth. And that's very important. We want the reserve to be able to take advantage of that. In addition to that, the F-35 is going to be able to take on some new missions and roles. It's going to redefine multi-role and be able to perform very well the air-to-air and air-to-ground typical legacy roles, but it'll be able to also take on roles like electronic attack and non-traditional intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. The fact that it can get close into the target because of stealth and have very, very capable sensors, it'll be able to watch what the threat's doing, send that data back, and give a full view of the battlefield. What we're seeing in simulations is, even if the F-35 has expended its ordnance, it can still direct some of the other fourth-generation platforms. So it becomes a leveraging platform and a force multiplier. So all of those combined, we believe the F-35 is the platform that the Air Force Reserve needs, and we want to continue to evolve that to address certain things like irregular warfare that were brought up this morning. Thank you.
I completely agree with the fifth-generation arguments that James put forward, and the F-35 certainly is, F-22 and F-35 fifth-gen capabilities are certainly have to be built in from the ground up. The sensors are important, and what Northrop Grumman provides and the way we see things going to continue to evolve, not just fifth-gen, but how we're going to reach back to the Air Force Reserve components fourth-gen fleets, are kind of a four-part process. Really, it's what elements of situational awareness, as the operator sitting in the cockpit or in some other capacity operating a sensor, is you need to have the appropriate sensors on board the aircraft. You then need to have the ability to fuse what those sensors are talking about into some kind of a digestible format with all the things that are out there that able to gather information and whatnot. They've got to be put into a palatable format that the humans can understand at the operator level. Thirdly, you've got to be able to put them into a format where you can display them. It can't be federated sensor or federated multifunction displays where you have to look at things to piece together this information. And then lastly, you need to be able to share it. You need to be able to share it not only with the fifth-gen fleet, not only with the fourth-generation fighters, but also the command and control element and the other operators that are out there in the field. So that's kind of the elements of situational awareness. And what we have conversations about as a sensor provider, Northrop Grumman has a critical role with both Boeing and Lockheed Martin with providing these sensors, is how can we make them more affordable, how can we integrate them better, et cetera. A lot of the things that General Thompson touched on with regard to precision involve these types of sensors. And a lot of the things that the last panel talked about with regard to the fiscal realities that we're facing certainly impact also. So how can we go about doing this? The reserve component, as we go through the strategic process in this QDR with how we grow with the active Air Force, both concurrently and proportionally, however our leadership decides that to be, we're going to need to find that balance between the fourth gen and fifth gen, the 2015 to 2020 time frame when fifth gen will be more in the field, but also when the reserve component will still have those fourth gen platforms that we need to maintain, both from a capabilities perspective and from a logistics maintainable perspective.
Great, excellent overview and a perfect marriage to our first panel and a lot of the questions that we all had. I want to go ahead and welcome the audience back. I know it's post-lunch, so if you wouldn't mind walking back up to the microphone if you have a question, and we'll go ahead and get started. And if nobody asks, I'm going to put Bo on the spot, so don't make me do that.
being a logistics type and following some of these things for 30 years, would it seem logical that when you're talking about the high MC rate for the C-40, that this is similar to the Boeing's worldwide contract for logistics support and KC-10 and other systems, that this is a direct contributor to the success of this program?
Yeah, Jim, I think that appreciate the question. When you take an aircraft that's off a commercial base and has inherent high reliability rates, when you begin to add the more military systems, the more military capabilities that you add, start to degrade that and bring that down. Mm-hmm. But I think you're right. I think most of that is in the inherent commercial aspects.
There's spare parts and engines and all those things. You got thousands of airplanes, and we're not the only user that's got to wait until that can be manufactured by the industrial database. All right, thanks.
Yeah, and let me piggyback on top of that, Jim. One of the reasons we can do that, and I talked about the small force structure we have at Scott. We're actually teamed with airlines with Delta and United, Lufthansa, Egypt Air. And have access to those spares and things. And in the commercial world, unlike F-16, where you would want to have the engines on station, if you're using a commercial engine, most airlines don't own their own engines. What they do is if they land somewhere and they need to have an engine replaced, they'll bring it out and they'll lease it for a couple days or a couple weeks while their engine comes off, gets repaired, and then gets put back on. And once again, if you have a larger commercial base to go to, you can certainly do that and take advantages of those things. Thanks, Jim.
My question looks at the F-35, particularly the joint aspects of that aircraft, and in this this austere fiscal environment that we foresee ourselves to be in for the future. Speak to the possibility, for example, of an Air Force bought F-35 at a Navy base being maintained by a Marine crew?
Well, I think that what we're trying to do with the F-35 development is to make that very possible. Are there going to be no problems, no challenges? I don't think we're going to fool ourselves into that. But that there's about a 70% commonality of parts between the three variants, the Air Force and the Navy and the Marine variant. With those common parts, the goal is to be able to repair that. With some of the unique parts, you're going to have a different way to approach that, but I think our goal all along in going through the F-35 program is to reduce the overall not only development costs but the sustainment costs as well as compared to legacy platforms, and we're meeting that. We're making solid progress. The feedback from all three services has been very positive, and we're not all the way there. There continue to be challenges, but we look forward to those challenges, and we think it's very possible we'll be able to do that going forward.
I'd actually like to piggyback on that a little bit and take it a little step further and talk about our international partners. So we've not only got the three service components that we're going to represent with this airplane internationally. Congress has taken, actually in this true spirit of DC, this will be a two-part question. Congress has taken note lately of the industrial military complex and the potential degradation that we're having with all these different budgetary issues. When we start talking about our allied nations, as far as the F-35, are we going to keep most of that production back here, or are we going to move it overseas like we did with a lot of the F-16 programs? That's number one. And number two, along the lines of the sensor fusion, when we start talking about our allied partners, same capabilities to be able to communicate inherent in the system. The F-22 was obviously designed pretty much for our own use only. But it still had problems communicating with our own airplanes, fourth generation. F-35 is going to have none of these problems with our allied nations?
I'll take a shot at that, and Chris can piggyback on it. As far as the production facilities and overseas, that is a government-to-government decision, and Lockheed's not involved in that. I will tell you what's going on right now in a current status is that Italy